Hey.
As the world's largest live nature cam network, Explore.org hosts cameras that stream live footage from many areas across the planet. And many cameras broadcast from remote areas, places like Brooks River in Katmai National Park, Alaska, where their installation and maintenance can be challenging, to say the least. Good day, everyone. This is Mike Fitz with Explore.org. And today we're talking the tech of the bearcams and attempting to answer the question, just how do they work? To help me answer that question, my guests today are Candice Rusch, Explore.org's Director of New Media, and Joe Pifer, Field Operations Manager for Explore.org. They're part of the dedicated team that worked behind the scenes to make the bearcams a success, and I'm thankful for all their support over the last several years as well. So Candice and Joe, please, welcome to the chat, and thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having us, which is weird. I guess thank you us for having us. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. And if you have questions about the technology of the bearcams, please submit those in the comments at the bottom of the page below the live camera feed, so you can scroll down. You'll see the comments there. There are a couple of helpful moderators from Explore.org watching for those questions, and they'll send those questions our way so we can try to answer those during the chat or towards the end of the chat as well. To begin, however, I'd really like to provide some context for Brooks River, specifically where this place is, because if you aren't familiar with Brooks River and its location, let me take you on a quick tour. Brooks River is located about 300 miles southwest of Anchorage, Alaska, in the west central portion of Katmai National Park. The river is about 1.5 miles long, and in this view, it flows from left to right. Brooks Falls is located at about the river's halfway mark. And along with our webcam partner, the National Park Service, Explore.org hosts and maintains several webcams on the river. The signal from the bearcams is relayed to not one, but two repeaters on Dumpling Mountain, which is in the middle of the frame right now. And then the signal is relayed to the small town of King Salmon, about 30 miles away. Maintaining this system in this area that is essentially off the grid, since no roads or power lines connect Brooks River to King Salmon, is, again, a challenge, to say the least. So that will give you just a basic idea of where this, where the cameras are, their location. Katmai and Brooks River itself is about 300 miles southwest of Anchorage, Alaska. So again, it's in a very remote area. But Joe, I wanted to maybe kind of hone in at the river first and talk maybe about the cameras that we have here there specifically at the river. And actually a question that's been in my queue to get answered for a long time. It actually came in through the Bearcam question form that you can find in the more information tab at the bottom of the screen. Somebody was wondering, Serena was wondering, what type of cameras do you use for these live cams?
Sure. We're always going for the highest quality cameras that are basically out on the market. So usually it's a combination of either high-end security cameras and or broadcast type cameras that they're all pan-tilt zoom. And, what we're looking for is the highest resolution possible, as well as smart cameras that have web interfaces that we can, just have total control over.
And you may be able to see some of those cameras from time to time if you look around, office buildings or inside of office buildings. Occasionally, you'll see them. They just have like basically just a small dome attached to the bottom of them. So it's not uncommon to see these around office buildings. Although the ones that we have at Brooks River have a few additional perks that maybe we'll try to talk about a little bit later on. Serena, through the Bearcam question form, was also wondering, Candice, what internet speed do you need to sort of stream these cameras live to the internet? Getting it out of Brooks Camp is a big challenge.
Yeah, Joe can also talk some about this, but we sort of have a range. We can stream something as low as 1 megabit a second upload, but we're hoping for 4 megabits a second upload per camera. So if you're in there, we can get HD video to the internet. The lower the speed is, the more pixelation you'll see. You'll perhaps see buffering, dropped frame rates, because that's generally an indication that like there's some struggles on the network. Higher resolutions, better quality. And so one of our biggest troubleshooting steps when we start to see buffering is to drop that rate to see if it stabilizes and helps the network. And I'm sure Joe's got some other points there as well, since he helps manage all these networks.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to internet, the more the merrier, and the quality of the bandwidth definitely is very important as well. In King Salmon, we're lucky enough to have King Salmon, the town in the vicinity of Brooks Camp. Without that, we wouldn't be able to do anything really, or it would just be a very different experience. The fact that there's that town there and the town of Naknek is very close, and there's a huge presence there as far as infrastructure goes, both power and bandwidth. That's basically what enables us to, have a starting point, which is King Salmon, and then we, go out from there. But the quality of internet is very, very important, and just the overall reliability of it as well. Those are mostly what we look for. It's the speed is just one component of what we're looking for. And then as far as like, if we are presented with lower capacity, we just, the way we stream, we have to be flexible. We have to be able to work with lower bit rates, lower bandwidth, lower quality providers. So that kind of keeps us on our toes as far as how do we pull a stream out of any given site. In my opinion, we have very high quality bandwidth at Brooks Camp, considering where it is and everything.
It is sort of amazing that we can get the signal really anywhere. Relatively few people have been to Brooks Camp and Katmai. A few more people have been to King Salmon and Naknek. And if you haven't been to those towns, they're in a sense more industrialized than what you might expect for rural Alaska, especially Naknek. It's basically the main hub of the salmon fishing industry up there, with just a ton of salmon processing facilities. So a lot of energy needs, happen there, a lot of power capacity. Of course, internet speed, as you were mentioning, is just one component, but there's one of the hiccups that we experience is internet bandwidth, because we would like to stream, I think, more cameras out of Brooks Camp. We could probably put up a few more angles, a few more different locations. We just don't really have the bandwidth right now to support all the cameras that we do have, because it's like trying to, the way I envision it is like you have a pipe maybe that's, of all this data coming out of Brooks Camp that's like, a meter wide, and you're trying to shove it into a pipe in King Salmon that's, perhaps only, 10 centimeters wide or something like that. So there's only so much data capacity for the data to go out. So how are you dealing with that issue, Candice, that internet bandwidth issue?
We did a lot this year to help clean up that bandwidth issue. One of the biggest steps we did was just securing the network, so like devices couldn't accidentally access it and take up our bandwidth. Joe did that. Joe also removed public access from devices we didn't need access to, right? So like at Brooks Camp, every like kilobit matters for us. We have very little headroom. So even just something like being available that we might like a power switch where we can reboot remotely, that kind of stuff, like removed it from public access, we got back quite a bit of data there. And then the other thing is just like we watch it a lot. Our camera controls do take up some bandwidth, so if we start to see stuff being overloaded, we'll ask the camera operators to hop off until networks stabilize. And Brooks is probably the network we watch the most closely because of how limited our capacity is at Brooks Camp. And I think this is probably the year with the most uptime, where we've experienced the fewest issues, at least since I've been at Explore. And I think a lot of that can go to Joe, because, or I guess on this side of me, because he's been just really like very careful about setting up the network this year.
Yeah, it's something that's even on my radar when I go to Brooks Camp too. Sometimes people, I think the bear camp audience might be wondering, well, why don't you just share more photos and videos directly from Brooks Camp? And it's because if I uploaded a video, I could easily kill the bear camp network. So I try not to do that.
Should appreciate Mike and Naomi. They'll oftentimes be up until like 10 or 11 p.m. because that's when our camera operators hop off and we have more bandwidth available, and then they can upload photos and videos and stuff. So they'll be up super late getting stuff to us so that we can like edit videos and stuff for you the next day. So yeah, very, very helpful. Thanks, guys.
So internet capacity, again, one of those challenges that you work with, but another one is powering the cameras. And Joe, how are the cameras powered? You have a few different systems.
Yeah, so well, in years past, it's all been 100% off-grid power, basically using whatever we can to generate power. So at Brooks Falls, for example, you have sun, and that's about it. So that is, everything's powered off batteries, and then it's a matter of how do we recharge those batteries at a given location. Brooks Falls, 100% solar panels. And it's dependent upon the weather. So it's always a challenge there in Alaska, as with everything is in Alaska with weather. On the Dumpling Mountain, we also have wind to use. So we do have wind generators up there, and it's a hybrid system where we've got the wind generator, we've got the solar panels, and then as a backup, we use a small generator that is fueled by methanol fuel that will kick on basically only when needed as a backup. That system has worked very well over the last few years. And, in my opinion, we're powering things every possible way that we can on top of the mountain. In years to come, technology improvements may provide better experiences, like improvements in battery technology, improvements in the wind turbine technology, all of those things. We look at literally every single year to see if there's something, maybe we should try this year to try to, just stabilize the system even more. But there's definitely been kind of an evolution over the last, 7 or 8 years, however long the system's been there. Each year, I feel like we accomplish greater power, basically, in it. The system lasts longer and longer. At the same time, we're also tapping into the camp power that is a giant diesel generator that's powering the entire side of the camp. So there's another source of power that we have to use. But yeah, every location, whatever we have available is what we're using.
And with the battery storage capacity for the falls cams, could you estimate, I don't know if it's possible, but could you estimate how long they would run without the aid of sunlight? Would we, for example, at this time of the year where it gets dark every night, would we drain the batteries completely if it ran all night?
Well, when we design a system, there's a series of calculations that you do, and you aim for about 5 days of power strictly off the batteries with no charge coming into the battery. So each system, Falls, Dumpling Temp, and Dumpling, I would estimate 5 days before things would just kind of go offline. But it is an estimate. Every year changes. The batteries being out, sitting out there over the winter. The health of the batteries is very important for knowing really how long will it last. It's pretty much an ongoing science experiment all the time, mostly due to the weather and the fluctuations between the brutal winters with zero sunlight, and then like this particular summer, it was very mild and very warm there with a lot of sun. So but typically 5 days is a very good kind of estimate for each of the systems.
There was one year a few years ago, I can't remember, maybe 2015 or so, where the energy on the repeaters on Dumpling Mountain went out in August, and that's typically a time of the year when there's a lot of sunshine, and it was just because it was really cloudy up there,
Yeah.
and they weren't getting any sun at all. So I mean, sometimes that happens. I mean, the Alaska Peninsula is famous for its poor weather conditions. And that actually
Sure.
sort of gets me to the next question, Joe. How do you weatherproof this equipment up there? How do you keep the ice and the rain and everything and the wind from blowing everything over?
Sure. Well, pretty much by any means necessary. Cable glands, just a conduit, silicone, guy wires to keep things there so they don't blow off the mountain. Outdoor rated enclosures. Ultimately, what ends up doing the weatherproofing is the annual trip that we go every year, and we rejuvenate the systems. We fix everything that was broken. I don't think there's been one single year where we haven't gone back there and there's something that happened like over the winter, just because you don't know. And it's also, this is another good example of kind of an evolution of where that process of weatherproofing has evolved as well. And every year you have these lessons learned from last year. Oh, we should have done this, and then you incorporate that into your annual trip. And fingers crossed that you were right. And we just kind of see things as they survive longer and longer. One thing going back to what you just said, though, about another huge challenge with the off-grid power and that particular spot is the fact that you pretty much do have two different climates, one on top of the mountain and one down at Brooks, that you do have to account for. So they're like, it's literally like two completely different scenarios, which is something that is also challenging out there.
Right. The elevation difference is only a couple thousand feet, really. But it's a huge difference. Like on a day like today, it's probably very cold on the top of Dumpling Mountain. And it could be quite comfortable down at Brooks River, where the climate is warm enough and wet enough to support trees. But up on top of Dumpling Mountain, it's a much, much different environment. And at this time of the year too, like if anything were to go wrong on top of Dumpling, speaking from experience, you really have to think carefully about going up there and what you're going to do, what you're going to carry with you, because the weather can turn so poor so quickly. So it harkens back, I think, to the idea of the challenge of getting these signals out to the rest of the world. And Joe, what about the bearcam signal itself? I mean, there's no telephone wires or any wire, no underground wires going up on top of Dumpling Mountain. So how are you getting that signal from the bearcams, from those individual cameras down at the river, up to the mountaintop, and then to King Salmon? How does that signal get relayed?
Sure. So in King Salmon, at the Park Service compound, is what I call it, that is essentially where our internet is handed off to us. So then it is up to us to extend that internet the whole way out to Brooks Camp. The way we do that is by using wireless radios that they're called long haul, basically a long haul point-to-point link from King Salmon up to Dumpling Mountain, which is about 30 miles, just clear line of sight as the crow flies. Just as, the way I always imagine it is basically like a cable, only it's wireless. As long as those two radios are online, we have internet on top of the mountain. From there, then the other repeater spot is called Dumpling Temp, and why that's important is because all of Brooks Camp has a clear line of sight up to Dumpling Temp. So we just simply connect Dumpling repeater to Dumpling Temp, and then basically anywhere within the camp, anywhere that we can see that repeater and install a radio and power it, we can get internet too. So that's it in a nutshell. Just a series of relay points that we just use wireless radios. Yes, that's Dumpling repeater.
Oh yeah, I think this is the main Dumpling repeater, and this one has experienced some wind damage in the past. I've seen I don't know if we'll have the opportunity to show it, but I uploaded a photo of the park's radio tower, and this is separate from the NPS systems up there, but the park's radio tower has completely blown over during previous winter. There it is.
Right.
That was from a windstorm some winter a few years ago. We lost, when I was a ranger, we lost the dumpling repeater. We couldn't connect on the radios there. And then when they did a flight over the mountaintop, that's what happened to it. And this is a picture I took in the springtime once Brooks Camp opened. So it gives you a bit of an understanding of how rough conditions can be up there. So we get the signal out to Key Salmon. And then Candice, how do we get the, what considerations do you need to take in mind before pushing the camera's live stream to the internet? It's probably not as simple as, I imagine, as flipping a switch. I've never seen, you know, how it works. I don't think I'd understand it anyway. But can you walk us through that process?
Right. So Explorer's live streams give the appearance of simplicity, which means that we're doing our job, but they are actually way more complicated than like what we're doing right now, just like a standard live events where like Brian, who's helping run this chat, will just push a button and then we're live. So we need to think about signal strength. We talked about that earlier, like what kind of bandwidth do we have? Because some different distribution locations like Facebook and YouTube sometimes won't support like lower bandwidths and they'll buffer and latency and a bunch of stuff. You guys have seen it. The next thing we need to consider is like, where is it going to be distributed? Is it going to YouTube? Is it going to Facebook? Those are different destinations that we need to take into account. Because these are 24/7 streams, we also need to think about what's going to happen if we lose connection to the camera due to network or power failures. And generally that means we're going to VOD, which means that we now need to account for 2 different sources in the end stream. And so we need to create some processes where like it'll detect if the camera is online or offline. If it's offline, then we'll go to our highlight video. You guys have seen that a lot. We can also schedule this when it gets too dark. We need to think about like how the camera is going to be operated. And I think we have some questions about camera operations later. And then we need to test some of the other features we have on our site. So our recordings, so we can pull highlights, snapshots, and like live highlight detection on the site and a bunch of other stuff. And then we also need to work with our partners to create their Explore pages as well for on our side. But all of this is handled in the cloud, which is just a fancy way to say a lot of remote computers. And so we work with Amazon and we have a lot of different servers. One where the camera comes in, we have one that just hosts all of our highlight videos, and then we have another server where it streams out to our destination. I'm waving my hands like you can see it, but we're outside of the frame. So then another one where it goes out to its final destination. And so basically the signal is going to go from when Joe hands it to me, we're going to ingest it into one server, and then we're going to have another server that's looking at the camera to see if it's live. If it's live, it's going to push that right out to YouTube. If it's not, it's going to grab our video, our highlight video, and then it's going to push that out to YouTube. And that's like the simplest way to describe it, but each of those steps has, you know, their own failures and stuff. Even at the beginning of this chat, there were some issues, you know, it's just, you just got to like check each signal flow and then figure out where the issue is and address it there.
And then you did mention that a little bit about camera operators. So Candice, can you explain who operates the cameras?
Yeah, our camera operators are great. I love you all. So they're all volunteers by and large, and they are vetted by our director of camera operations. Sometimes they come to us through feedback emails or however, and then we pass it off to Catherine, who then like Cam Op Cat, you'll see her around. She vets them, she trains them, and they sort of get trained specifically on the cameras they're going to be operating, which is really great because they provide this like curated experience. They get to know the locations, where the good spots are, what information about the animals, that kind of stuff. Yeah, generally it's just volunteers and they're fantastic. And they give their time to us to help like give us this experience. Explore definitely is a very different place without camera operators to help like guide all of it.
Absolutely. I think the bearcam experience would certainly not be as engaging if we just had a static view the whole time. So yeah, I'd like to reiterate my thanks to all the camera operators out there. But what does their interface look like? Maybe both of you could help me answer that question. I actually haven't looked at it in a long time.
Haven't? Okay,
No.
so it's new. Maybe, I don't know, we'll have to, we generally don't give out like actual images of our camera operation just because it's proprietary. We spent the last year building a brand new camera operator like interface. Explorer uses several different camera models, and each of those models have their own different like internal device interfaces. And so we built something that is compatible with all the different cameras we use. It allows the camera operators to pan, tilt, zoom, reboot the cameras, like really like essential stuff. They can cycle through presets. And we're always, since it's a new system for us, we're like always looking to add like new features to help make the experience better for the camera operators, which will make the experience better for you guys. But generally it's just, you know, a preview of what's happening on the screen, and then a virtual joystick and a virtual zoom bar where they can do everything there. And we recently added support for being able to do all of that on like a game controller, like an Xbox controller, so they can just sit back and like pan with their joystick, which would be very cool. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's actually really cool. Next time you're around, maybe I'll show you how to do it. You can do it yourself.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And I would like to also inform everybody, if you're interested in becoming a camera volunteer for Explore.org, just send an email to volunteer@explore.org. There's some requirements for time and internet speed that you have at home, but if you're watching this broadcast right now, you probably have the internet speed to be a volunteer camera operator. And it just doesn't have to be with the bearcams either. A lot of the other cameras need camera operators as well. So if you enjoy wildlife, please, you know, send an email off, and maybe you can become part of the team soon. You know, we're getting. I just have a couple of questions for the both of you before we get to some of the viewer questions. But you know, we have to. You know, we get excited every year, of course, about Bearcam going live. You know, once May rolls around, you know, June especially, everyone who watches the Bearcam throughout the summer is really eagerly anticipating, you know, seeing the Bearcams go live again. But you know, maybe what we're not considering is how much planning goes into, you know, the cam installation and upgrade each year. So for both of you, you know, I'm wondering what do you think about when you're planning for these cameras to go live? So Joe, when you're going to Brooks Camp, you know, what do you plan for when you're thinking about going to a place that's so remote?
Sure. Well, the quick answer is you plan that everything failed and you have to replace everything. But
Okay.
that's the easiest way to do it. But no, basically, you know, you look at the year before and first identify really what the major issues were, if there were any. And you plan for those. The highest priority items are just keeping power going at all of the systems. You know, other items that we'll think about. So maybe new camera models have come out in the last year that maybe we'll get upgrading camera and getting a different, higher quality experience from one of the camera angles. But basically, you know, the best way to approach it is definitely plan out every single detail and every move that needs to be made in King Salmon, on top of the mountain at Brooks Camp, and then all the logistics involved with how do you travel from King Salmon to Dumpling to Brooks? How do you know, how many times do you have to hike the mountain? How much equipment do you have to take with you? How many people do you need to help Sherpa, you know, equipment up the mountain? Mike Fitz has done this. I think every time I've been out there, he's been a Sherpa for us, where we put a lot of weight on him and he just hikes it right up the mountain for us.
That's because I don't know how to do anything else.
Hey man, it's valuable work.
All along the way, coordinating with the Park Service personnel and management, you know, just really trying to have a very solid season turn-up plan that can be executed very efficiently in a relatively short timeline, and you know, usually in June. And then at the same time, also developing contingency plans for to account for that nothing goes as planned for the most part, especially in these very remote areas where you pretty much have to plan for things not going as planned and having a plan B, C, and D every time, just to kind of cover all your bases. So really just the overall planning and trying to think about it, and put it down on paper, exactly what we're going to do, why we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, and just answering all those questions and who is going to do it. All of those items are very important. That's how we do it.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Candice?
No, well, I mean, we do start the process fairly early. We'll start it probably in April or May to start looking ahead for the next seasons. And it's a what Joe's talking about is like a intellectual process first, and then he goes out and gets all the stuff that he may need and stuff like that. But yeah, it's become over the years that we've done this, we've gotten better at figuring out what might go wrong, but every single year there's something that you didn't. And I just sort of anticipate something's going to go wrong. And so you're just well, that's the thing that went wrong. And then you just go about fixing it. But having Joe on honestly has made the whole process so much easier for all of us. So thank you for that. Yeah.
My pleasure.
And before we get to the audience questions, one more question that I have for the two of you. If you could just do a little dreaming for a moment, if you could add anything to improve the bear cam experience, what would it be and why?
I would really be interested in it's never gonna happen as per our bandwidth conversations earlier, but a 4K or a 360 stream I think would be really, really interesting. If you could get a 360 camera, let people be their own camera operator, pan around, see what's happening, or something in 4K just to get the real details. But both of those things require 12 megabits a second up for one cam. It's just not gonna happen, but I would love it. More realistically, I think it would be interesting to get something on board like what Raptor Resource does, where they're locally switching between a bunch of different cameras. Right now, we've got a bunch of cameras on the lower river, but we have to choose which ones we're streaming. But if we could get a system locally where they could somebody could be in that computer and switching. And so we're only pushing out the one stream, but we could still have somebody picking the best views on lower river east or west or north or whatever's happening. I think that would be really interesting because then everybody would get all the views and we kind of wouldn't have to choose. But that's the conversation for Joe and I to have next May when we start the planning. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna, the underwater world there, I think, could be expanded upon. We have just a single small little fixed camera that's always pointed in the same direction. I think there's a lot more that happens underwater there. Maybe a pan-tilt zoom camera in an enclosure underwater, fully anticipating probably the bears are going to do something to it, but getting as much content as you possibly can before they do something to it. But I think that a camera like that would probably produce a lot, I don't know, just stuff that we're not seeing right now. I think that's kind of the one spot that we could explore a little bit more.
I love all those ideas, actually. The underwater camera, I've said this repeatedly, is one of my favorites there because even if you visit the river, it gives you a perspective that you can't see when you're walking on the bridge or you're going to the falls. So it's just an amazing experience, especially at this time of the year when the river's full of salmon and there are bears swimming by each day. I'm actually a little surprised, though, that the bears haven't mucked with that camera more.
I did it 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I went into the water just once this summer to tighten the bolts, and it didn't seem to on the mounting plates for the underwater camera, and the bears just didn't seem to twist it off after that. That was a little surprising to me overall. But Candice, also getting back to your idea of that 360 sort of version, I think that would be really amazing if people had the ability to kind of control their own experience. And that wouldn't eliminate camera operators either, because people would still
Yeah.
probably just want to sit back from time to time and not have to drive the cameras themselves. They'd still maybe want that more curated experience. But I would love it, you know, if you wanted to watch Otis all day, hey, you can watch Otis all day. And then somebody else could just focus on moms and cubs or whatever it happens to be. So I think that would be pretty amazing as well. And then one other idea that I have, I would love a Valley of 10,000 Smokes cam. I know I've talked to Joe about this a bunch of times. If
talked
we
to me
could
as
somehow
well.
get an Alaska volcano cam, I think that would be pretty amazing. If you think the views from Dumpling Mountain are great, I think you would really enjoy the Valley of 10,000 Smokes camera if we ever got that opportunity. So that's just something that I've been dreaming about for a number of years. I know we have a bunch of questions in our queue here. I'm going to try to get to those as quickly as I can. But yeah, before I forget, Joe and Candice, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have an opportunity to stick around for a few more minutes and answer a few viewer questions? All right,
Sure.
sounds great. I know one of them that people have been wondering for a long time, and maybe this is a good opportunity to answer this. Just how large is the technical team at Explore? Maybe just that you could, Candice, just go over the whole, you know, just give us a rundown on the Explore staff, because it's really just a handful of people.
Right, there's not a lot of us. The amount that we do with the support we have is absolutely spectacular. I say it all the time, we have 24/7 cameras, we're not 24/7 people. You are looking at 50% of Explore's tech team right now. There's me and Joe, Brian's helping run the chat, and then we've got our web developer, Dan, who helps keep the site up and running. He's the one who's always yelling at Discuss for us, so that's very helpful. And that's kind of it on the tech side. On like the social moderation side, y'all know Courtney, she's fabulous. Dara as well helps out, and they're both fantastic. And those are really like the two staffers who help manage like community, social, moderation, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot for all of us to take care of. And then we've got some admin support. Liz and Tracy help just, you know, make sure everybody gets paid and contracts are signed and all that kind of stuff. It's the least sexy, but potentially most important thing at Explore. Then there's Charlie, and he, you know, helps like direct all of us. Mike obviously has been on helping us with live chats as our naturalist, and all of you know what the live chats were like before we had him, so you know that he's been very valuable there. And then Emily, right? She helps do all of our helps field all the PR contacts for us, all the media news people who want footage from us, and then Kyle, who is our editor, the one editor for every single video you've seen on Explore, on our highlight channel on YouTube, all our VODs, that kind of stuff. Brian's also been helping him more there, and that's the team. Like, it's 10 of us. We're helping manage 180 some odd cameras, 10 million YouTube or Facebook followers, hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers, right? And we're all extremely Brian is like, and Catherine. Yes, Catherine, of course. I don't know why I can't forget Catherine. I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm talking to you right after this call. She helps manage all of our volunteer camera operators. Also, like, Explore does not run without Catherine, because she helps manage all 150 volunteer camera operators. And so they also really do help make the experience a lot better. But as far as the tech team goes, it's 4 of us. And then there's 10 other people. And that's kind of it. Like, and we all do what we do because we're like extremely passionate about what's happening here. So we're all trying to, at the end of the day, deliver the best experience for you guys. And internet's hard, guys. Some of these locations are real remote, and there's storms and flooding, and trees get in the way of radios. Like, there's always something, but it's a fun puzzle to play at.
Yeah, we should, I think, also at some point in time show the Joe's impersonation of the Mars rover that he built for the snowy owls up on the north slope of Alaska. So so I mean, the creativity of the team and all their hard work is sincerely appreciated by me and everybody else. And this is one of the things that we use at Brooks Camp for our mobile chats on occasion. So this is the cart on the left is what I call Johnny 5. So if you're familiar with the movie Short Circuit, you know where that name came from. This is a broadcast with a couple of rangers that happened last year. So as long as we can point that antenna to the repeater on Dumpling Mountain and get a good signal, anywhere at Brooks Camp we can do a live chat, just depending on what the bears happen to be doing. But Joe, the technology, of course, of all of this is changing so fast. I mean, each one of us practically carries like a supercomputer in our pocket now with iPhones. So what might we expect, in the future? We dreamed a little bit earlier, but about what we would like, but what could we expect to change with the webcams?
From a viewing experience, what the results would be longer viewing times, higher quality, and just basically less problematic. From my perspective, with technology, everything becomes smaller, faster, and goes down in cost. So essentially, we are always keeping an eye on technology and looking for those. There's so many devices that use, so there's so many things you have to watch, and just kind of make a judgment call on whether or not we're deploying that or not. Like I said earlier, I think some of the biggest improvements that I'm looking for is definitely in the off-grid power technology world, and how that technology is becoming smarter, smaller. Smaller batteries ultimately means we can hike them up Dumpling Mountain, and we don't have to helicopter them in. Like, that's a huge logistic change that would happen. So like technology in the world of Brooks Camp also affects the logistics of things. And ultimately, from a viewer experience, just less problems. You probably really wouldn't see anything except an improved experience is what we would be expecting or going for.
And might there be any plans, Joe, for hooking the lower river cameras to like solar panels or methanol fuel cells or something like that, so they could stay running longer? I know that was a question that somebody was wondering about early on in our chat here.
Sure. Yeah, and that's definitely something that we're going to address in the off season. Look at what our options are. How can we what kind of solutions can we put in place where we keep the lower river cams going as long as Brooks Falls? So it's definitely something we're thinking about, talking with all parties about. We don't have there's nothing firm yet, but that we'll firm something up for sure this off season.
And something I've also been curious about too, Candice, is how do you manage the data storage for the cameras? I mean, you're downloading terabits of information all the time. So
just shocking amount of data.
Yeah.
So we keep all recordings from all cameras that are live for 14 days. 2 weeks. And so our editors have 2 weeks to go pull the highlights. And then if he doesn't, then it's gone, because there's just absolutely no way we can hold all that footage forever. When our camera operators, you take snapshots on the site, our camera operators can also take snapshots in their camera controls. When camera operators do that, it'll archive the recording for longer. So if they see a fabulous moment that we may not get to, they want to, then we'll just hold on to only those moments for a very long time. And then all that's stored on a cloud server, and we have a method to pull things based on date, time, and camera location. And then that's what eventually becomes all of our highlights. But yeah, we don't keep it all forever, because it's so very much data. So we only keep it for 2 weeks.
And will we have maybe the additional capability of using the Riffles camera more often to pan and tilt and zoom, since we will be losing the lower river cameras in a few days?
Yeah, so that was our plan. So Riffles is going to be available for operation. We had a weird error with Riffles early in the season where I told Riffles, like, you can only pull 500 kilobits for camera controls, but every time our camera operators tried to move it, it would like spike up to like 2 megabits a second and like make the rest of the camera's buffer. So that's why it hasn't been operated. But with the other lower river cameras down, we have the bandwidth. So Riffles will be available for operation. They'll be able to pan around, look at that. And then Brooks Falls will be up, as will Dumpling. And then, Joe, we're going to get Knack Knack back up as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Well, we'll probably wait till after bear season for Knack Knack.
Okay.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Or, definitely after Bear Week.
After Bear Week, yeah. Yeah, so that's that. But yeah, Riffles will be available for panning and operation and stuff.
And one thing that viewers happen to notice on the cameras is when there's a lot of movement on the cameras, it seems like the view gets more pixelated. You know, we especially see that on the lower river. We see that at the falls. So can you explain in non-technical terms, you know, what might be happening and why that is?
Yeah, I can try. In very real ways, a more static image is using less data than a moving image. So when stuff is moving, especially because we're at lower bit rates on the lower river cameras because of bandwidth. So some of that's bandwidth. Some of that is the fact that like it's just harder to process a moving image on the server side. And then some of that has to do with the way that we send video to YouTube. It saves us a lot of streaming costs, but sometimes when it starts to move up, you'll see a little bit more pixelation, and then it'll get better. But yeah, a lot of that has to do with the bit rates we're streaming those cameras at. Just because we have very, very little headroom at Brooks Camp, so moving objects are just harder to process than the static object, and that's when you start to see more pixelation.
And there's also
There's
also the overall what's happening in the frame. Like if the sun's out and there's a bunch of reflections and the water's moving,
exposure matters. Yeah,
and all the leaves are moving. That is a tremendous amount of action happening, and the more action, the larger the data that's being squeezed through the available pipe. That's the simplest way to think about it.
And it's on all levels of the workflow too, from what's happening in the network to how the servers are processing it. It's just harder for a server to process as well with the same computing resources. So yeah, movement's just harder. But it's interesting that they noticed that, which is like, good looking, guys.
Yeah, I like to think about how our eyeballs are just so much better at capturing what's happening in the world than these cameras. I mean, these cameras are really, really great, but they are just not as good at handling contrast and movement as our eyes and our brains are, you know, to capture that information and interpret it. So maybe it'll get there one day, but the technology is just not quite there yet. You know, this is actually kind of a question about live chats and play-by-plays, stuff that we do on site at Brooks River. You know, somebody says that Mike has done a stellar job, so thank you to whomever has said that. It's nice to hear. But there's been some frustrations, you know, not only this year, but in years past. I know that I've had some, you know, complete live broadcast failures at Brooks River. So do you think you know, there might be a way to find and build sort of like a plug and play device that's sort of like an all-in-one setup? Because our live broadcast setup right now is it can be a little complicated, I guess, is the
sure. So there is no like one device that will do everything for you. Mostly because the kind of stuff we do just isn't like super popular. So there's not like a manufacturer out there like making remote, rugged, all-in-one IP, like connectable wireless camera, microphone devices like that. But we do have like, so some of it is just, you know, like more hands-on training. Some of it's improving at Brooks Camp, especially the wireless out in like other parts of camp, which we've all talked about this year already. Yeah, it would be nice. That would be, if you find a device like that, please send it to us because we will buy all.
Yeah, really, I mean, it's just a matter of you just keep trying different things, really, and finding something that works. You know, the Wi-Fi at the camp was improved this year, but at the same time, you know, it's ultimately, I think just using a device like a phone, an iPad, or whatever to be able to do everything is, I think, what would be best.
Yeah.
So, but we're always, you know, making changes there, trying to make things easy for whoever's on site, whoever has to manage the things on site, as well as making sure it works for when they hit go, it's streaming. Just you know, wanting things to just work. That's we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
And it's definitely getting there too. I know one big change over the last year or two has been the ability to use different apps on mobile devices. So like an iPad, you just put in a high quality microphone on your iPad, and you can do live chats fairly easily. It doesn't work so well for the play-by-play style broadcast because the camera feature on an iPad isn't as good as like a camcorder. So I think we still might have to work through that in the future.
I mean,
for
with the new
those types of
iPhone
broadcasts.
11, that new iPhone 11 has 3 cameras. Maybe we'll be sending one out with you next year. Super easy.
All right, something to check out for sure. But it's definitely you know, I think improved over the years. So we'll just keep on you know, fine tuning the system as best we can over time. There was actually there was a question related to the technology advancements. You know, you mentioned how we've been using different things over time, but how has the technology changed since Explore first started streaming from Katmai? You know, what has been the biggest change that perhaps you've noticed?
So I wasn't there at the beginning. Joe, you were helping installs pretty early too. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, or from my perspective, you know, the wireless technology allowing kind of to make that the very long link less problematic. That's huge. And then some of the devices that we have in those remote power systems, they become smarter, more dependable. They take a wider range of voltage, making them just more flexible with the stability of the power that they're receiving. That has become, that's very huge with those systems. Basically giving them kind of a more robust ability to stay online. That the technology had, the changes have done that. And then just the overall cameras, I think when they started, the cameras were 720p resolution, which at the time, that's what you could get. So it's all improved to 1080p at this point. The next jump would be 4K and then 8K, but along with the bandwidth would have to support it. But mostly also the ability to manage things, like for example, when Naomi needs something that I have to help her with, it's literally at the push of a button at this point, with as far as the management systems we have in place for me to help her. So like the ability to help on site, Brooks Camp, from me sitting here in California, I think that's changed a lot too. Just being able to support the site a lot more efficiently. And that's all software based, I'd say that, those are the main changes.
From a streaming side, the server technology has gotten more tolerant to flexible networks that are going up and down all the time. The methods of us detecting when cameras are up and down are smarter, so that switching is better. The ability to even take a snapshot has happened, which is just like a huge part of what Explorer is now, for people to be able to get their own photos, all that kind of stuff. At a server computer end has also improved greatly over the year, just more efficient, faster, more tolerant to any network condition we have.
A question about snapshots. Do you know off the top of your head, if you're using the snapshot feature on the cameras through explore.org, what the time delay for that might be, and if there's any sort of reason why there's a time delay?
This has changed, and I may be wrong because it has very recently changed, but because we've handled snapshots in a way that are more efficient now, but I'm pretty sure the snapshot might be a little bit ahead of the feed. And that's because it's pulling from a server, and you can grab the snapshot faster than it's getting to YouTube. And I think it's a few seconds. I think it may be just a few seconds ahead of the feed. But I mean, huge asterisks on that, because I always get them mixed up about which one it is. Yeah.
And then one final question. I think this is a fun question to answer, and one I'm also curious about as well. Out of all of your cameras that you have on explore.org, which ones are the most challenging to run and maintain? Is it the bearcams, or is it? I mean, there's some other ones that are definitely pushing the envelope as far as what you can support. So, which one of those are the most challenging, in your opinion?
Bearcams up there. PBI.
Yeah, they're up there.
But
yeah.
Although PBI's BJ over there helps you do a lot of their own stuff, so it's not hard for us. But they're a very technical, complicated network system. Grace was a huge challenge, Joe, which could be like its own live chat all on its own, where Joe just describes what we had to do to get that done. Owl Research Institute also, Montana's remote enough that their networks also have pretty limited bandwidth.
I mean, ultimately, the biggest challenge with any of this is definitely logistics. We at Brooks Camp, there's always someone there willing to help and go if they have to hike up the mountain to do something. So from that perspective, we're definitely lucky. There are some systems out there that are literally, there's no one, like Frying Pan Tower, for example, during the hurricane. That is very difficult to maintain, because if something happens, there's nothing we can do. Literally, we don't have any options whatsoever. It either is online or it's not, and it's in the middle of a hurricane. So even if we want to get out there, we can't. So to me, those are the biggest challenges. When it comes to this, the Congo, again, there's people there that we can send messages to and have them check things and take pictures and troubleshoot. So we're not completely on a different planet, but for me, just basically having the logistics there to be able to even try to troubleshoot something are the ones that are less problematic. But at the end of the day, yes, the bearcams are very challenging, just because of the nature of the terrain that they're in and the harsh winters that Alaska has. And there's nothing easy about it, for sure.
And with a lot of these cameras too, I'd like to add, we also have to consider not disturbing the wildlife too, and the animals that we want to watch on the cameras. With Brook River, I mean, you can't just go into the river on July 10th and all of a sudden expect to maintain the falls camera if something goes down. So you got to do it right, do it well before the bears gather at the river, before there might be restrictions on your movement and use of the river and things like that. And I think that goes to or that applies to many of the other cameras that we have, that especially that have
eagles for sure.
Eagles, yeah, any of the nesting bird species, you want to get there, make sure that those are maintained before the animals are there, so you're not disturbing them or unduly disturbing them. So it's so much hard work.
That also brings up another point. Can I along with not disturbing the animals, sometimes we have to think about not disturbing our partners. We're reaching out to them individually to help support these cameras, and it's our mission is to support their mission, and their mission is not live cams. And so sometimes we just have to wait for them to have the availability to help work with us, because they're off raising dogs and conserving the planet and like doing the hard work that we're all here to support. And so sometimes stuff will be down for a little longer just because like they have to go do the thing that they're an organization to do, and it's going to take some time for them to be able to coordinate and work with us and like get this stuff back online.
Yeah, very well said. Great points overall. I learned a ton from this discussion. I'm glad that you two were able to join me today, because there are a lot of questions that the viewers brought up that I wanted to know the answer to, and I didn't quite have time to put them in my queue overall, and a lot of great answers to my original questions that you had there. So Candice and Joe, thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you. See you online.
All right, and I'll talk to both of you sometime soon, and for the rest of you
Probably
on
right
Twitter, yeah, I'll be online soon to talk more about bears. So thanks for joining us today, and Never Stop Learning.